My brother had his friends jump me and lied straight to our uncle's face about it. When I finally spoke up, he just said, "Your brother cares." He wouldn't do that. Yesterday, he framed him for the pills, and he's now in trouble with the law. The first time Caleb hit me, I was 9. It wasn't a punch, not really, just a sharp shove into the wall after I accidentally unplugged his game console. But the message was clear. Caleb was the king of our house, and I was just furniture, breakable, forgettable furniture. My name is Julia. I'm 24 now, living in Missouri. But this story starts in a crumbling split level on the edge of Cedar Hill. Back then, I was just a quiet, wide-eyed kid trying to survive the wreckage of my older brother's moods. Our parents, to put it kindly, were hands-off. My mom believed in peace at all costs, and my dad quoted the same tired line like it was gospel. No violence in this house. We're family, but it never applied to Caleb. No matter what he did, pushing, hitting, screaming, he always got a pass. To them, Caleb was special, just passionate, my mom would say. Just high-achieving, my dad would add. Outside the house, that was actually true. Caleb was a straight-A student, the type who volunteered at animal shelters and held doors open for teachers. Everyone loved him. Adults fawned over his manners. Neighbors called him a role model. But inside those walls, he was a nightmare. I used to lie awake at night, frozen in bed, listening for the sound of his door creaking open. That was always the worst part, the moment before. The silence before he lashed out, before the fury. Sometimes I convinced myself it was just the house settlement. Other times, I knew better. When I was 12, I made a mistake I'll never forget. It was late, maybe 1 in the morning, and I'd had this awful dream. Something about drowning, my legs tangled in seaweed, my voice lost underwater. I woke up gasping, disoriented, and stumbled out into the hallway. I don't know why I ended up outside Caleb's room. Maybe part of me thought he'd understand. Maybe I just didn't want to be alone. I knocked barely, a soft tap. I was about to walk away when his door yanked open. And there he was, eyes bloodshot, breathing heavy, already mad. "What the hell do you want?" he hissed. "I had a nightmare," I muttered. I couldn't breathe. "What are you, 5?" He stepped forward, and before I could move, he grabbed me by the front of my shirt and slammed me against the hallway wall. My head cracked hard enough to make my vision blur. I didn't scream. I didn't even fight. I just froze. Caleb dragged me into his room and threw me down. "You wake me up again, and I'll break your jaw," he said, voice low and steady. "Go ahead and tell Dad. See what he does." I didn't tell anyone. A couple months later, though, something changed. It was a Saturday morning, and he shoved me in the kitchen because I used the last of the milk. I don't know what came over me, but I pushed back, hard. I even landed a hit on his jaw. He looked stunned, but only for a second. Then came the fists, and I let him do it. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my hands. I just sat there, taking every punch like I deserved it. Like I crossed some line I wasn't allowed to cross. And afterward, when he left the room, I curled up on the floor and whispered, "I'm sorry." I wasn't sure who I was talking to. That was our normal. Caleb always wore his mask in public, smiling for teachers, helping at food drives, shaking hands with pastors. At home, though, he ruled with fear. And the worst part was, no one stopped him. Not once. My childhood wasn't full of bruises you could see. It was made of flinches, silences, and the kind of fear that settles in your bones. By the time I was 13, I had learned how to disappear, how to walk on eggshells so quietly, you forgot you were even there. And somehow, everyone else kept calling Caleb a gift. By the time I was 16, I wasn't that scared little kid anymore. Not physically, anyway. Caleb was still a year ahead of me in school, still casting his long golden shadow everywhere he went, but I wasn't helpless anymore. I'd started lifting weights freshman year, partly because coach suggested it, mostly because I needed an outlet, something to pour all that anger into. Every rep, every sprint, every practice, those were the only times I felt in control. I made varsity sophomore year, shooting guard. I wasn't the best on the team, but I worked harder than anyone else. Coach used to call me the silent hammer. I never smiled during games, never talked trash. I just played. At home, things were quieter with Caleb. Not better, just less physical. He still liked to throw his weight around, but he couldn't shove me like before. Not without risking me shoving back. And I think he knew that. We mostly ignored each other. Civil at the dinner table, distant at holidays. Like we'd agreed to pretend the past didn't happen. But some things don't stay buried. It started with a rumor. I was in the locker room after practice, lacing up my shoes, when I overheard 2 guys from Caleb's class talking near the showers. "Dude, I heard Lacey hooked up with Ryan Monroe while she was still with Caleb." "No way. That girl's poisoned, man. You don't mess with someone like her unless you've got a death wish." Caleb had been dating Lacey for over a year. Blonde, beautiful, smarter than people gave her credit for, and terrifying in her own way. She could cut you with a smile. The kind of girl who knew how to weaponize secrets. I didn't say anything, but I filed it away. The next week, it all blew up. Lacey showed up at school holding hands with Ryan Monroe, grinning like nothing had happened. Caleb didn't say a word about it, but his knuckles were raw by the time he got home that day. A few nights later, he walked into my room without knocking. "You busy?" I looked up from my homework, startled. It had been months since he'd spoken to me like a human being. "I guess not." He stood there for a second, awkward. Then he said, "Come with me." I didn't ask where we were going. We ended up outside Ryan's place. I should have known. He lived on the nicer side of town, fancy porch, string lights, the whole deal. Caleb rang the doorbell like he was delivering cookies. Ryan answered, grinning like a jackass. Well, didn't think you'd show up." Caleb didn't say a word, just stepped aside and looked at me. I shouldn't have done it. I knew that, but I did. I grabbed Ryan by the collar and slammed him against the siding, told him to keep Lacey's name out of his mouth, told him he was lucky I didn't do worse. He didn't fight back. He didn't have to. His dad came out, screaming, and we bolted down the block, laughing like idiots. Caleb slapped me on the back when we got in the car. "You've got a mean right hook," he said. And for a second, just a second, it felt like we were brothers again. Of course, that didn't last. With Caleb, it never did. That moment in the car with Caleb, us laughing like old friends, was the last time things felt even remotely okay between us. He started seeing Lacey again a week later. I found out in the most ridiculous way possible. Walking through the school courtyard, earbuds in, sipping a Gatorade, when I saw them leaning against her Jeep, arms wrapped around each other like the last month never happened. I stopped mid-step. He caught my eye, gave me a little shrug, like, "What can you do?" Later that night, I said something. Of course I did. "She cheated on you in front of the entire school." Caleb barely looked up from his phone. People make mistakes. She didn't make a mistake. She made a choice. "So did you?" He finally looked at me. "Let it go, Jules." "No," I said. "You're getting played." Again, he stood. I stood. "You think you know everything just because you can throw a basketball through a hoop?" "I think I know what it looks like when someone's using you." He took a step closer. For a second, I thought he'd swing. "You don't know a damn thing." That was it. Daytime over. I avoided him after that. Didn't trust him. Didn't want to be in the same room. But Caleb had a way of luring me back in. Always did. A few days later, I got home from practice and the house was empty. I figured my parents were at the store or something. I grabbed a protein bar, dropped my bag in the hallway, and headed toward the bathroom. That's when I heard the noise. Footsteps, fast and heavy. Two guys I didn't recognize charged at me from the laundry room. One of them had brass knuckles. I remember the first hit, the metallic taste in my mouth, the way my legs folded before I even knew I was falling. I didn't say much, just grunted and kept going. A fist in my ribs, a boot to my side. Something cracked, my collarbone, maybe. My vision swam. I curled in on myself like I used to as a kid, when Caleb would lose control. And just like then, no one stopped it. Except this time, someone did walk in. Our dad. I'll never forget the way he stood in the doorway, frozen, like the image didn't compute. "Hey," he barked. "What the hell is going on?" The guys scattered, darting past him out the front door. One of them dropped the brass knuckles on the porch. Dad knelt beside me, face pale. "Julian, talk to me. What happened?" I could barely speak. "Caleb," I whispered. They knew my name. One of them said, "He said Caleb sent us." His face twisted, but not with anger or confusion. Disbelief. That can't be right. "Caleb wouldn't. He's your brother." "He did this," I said, voice hoarse. "He set me up." Dad shook his head slowly. No, son. Caleb's not like that." I laughed, which hurt like hell. "Are you serious?" He helped me to the car, drove me to the ER. I kept expecting him to ask more questions to the press, but he didn't. Just nodded politely when the nurse asked for insurance info and filled out the forms while I sat there holding my side and trying not to cry. When the doctor asked what happened, I told the truth. Everything. My dad interrupted halfway through. "He's confused," he said, voice too calm. "My son's roughhouse sometimes. Nothing serious." I looked at him, stunned. "You saw them. You saw what they did." He didn't look at me. "Let's not make this worse than it is." And that's when I knew. He wasn't going to believe me. Not really. Because believing me would mean admitting that Golden Boy Caleb wasn't golden. It would mean seeing what he didn't want to see. I lay in that hospital bed, broken, bruised, and humiliated. And for the second time in my life, I realized something awful. In this family, truth only mattered if Caleb was the one telling it. 3 days after the hospital, a social worker named Ms. Vega came to our house. Petite, serious eyes, clipboard always in hand. She wasn't cold, but she didn't smile much either. I think she'd seen too many kids like me, too many parents like mine. My dad sat stiffly on the recliner, arms crossed, while my mom perched on the edge of the couch like she was hosting a PDA meeting. Caleb was out for a drive. Of course he was. Ms. Vega turned to me. "Julian, I want you to tell me exactly what happened. In your words. Take your time." My hands were still shaking when I handed her the USB stick. "What's this?" "Proof," I said quietly. "Everything I told the hospital. It's all on there." She plugged it into her tablet, and the screen lit up with a folder labeled Caleb Evidence. Inside were screenshots of texts, photos of bruises over the years, timestamps of missed school, ER discharge papers, and one video. I'd found it by accident. One night a few months back, Caleb had left his phone charging in the kitchen. I'd gone in to grab water and heard it buzzing. The screen was lit up with a group chat. I didn't touch it. I just looked, but what I saw made me start collecting things, just in case. One video was from last year. Caleb had recorded himself with a couple of his friends, laughing while talking about how easy it was to scare Julian into silence. That clip showed him mocking the way I used to flinch, like it was a game. Ms. Vega's jaw clenched as she watched. When it ended, she turned to my parents. "Did you know about this?" My mom opened her mouth, closed it, and finally said, Boys fight sometimes. They're just brothers. No, I cut in. He fights. I get hurt. That's not the same. The room went still. My mom blinked, like she'd never heard my voice before. Ms. Vega looked at my dad. You were present during the most recent assault? He nodded slowly. Yes, but I didn't see Caleb there. I stared at him. Because he sent people. Dad, he didn't throw the punches himself this time. I don't believe he'd do that. He's been doing it for 10 years. And then came the twist. The front door opened. Uncle Ron stepped in. He wasn't supposed to be there. I hadn't called him, Ms. Vega had. Ron wasn't like the rest of my mom's family. He lived 2 hours away, rarely visited, and when he did, he didn't sugarcoat anything. When he saw me at the hospital, he'd said 2 things. This ends now, and I'll be back. He was back. He pulled a manila envelope from his coat and handed it to Ms. Vega. Photos, messages, threats. Caleb sent them to my son before. He didn't want to tell anyone, but I made him forward them to me. My dad stood. Now wait just a minute. Sit down, Ron snapped. You've had 15 years to speak up. You didn't. Inside the envelope were printed screenshots, photos of broken items, and text like, tell your cousin if he talks, he'll regret it. Julian's a little freak, always crying to mom. Time to man up. Then Ron dropped the final bomb. I installed a camera in the garage 2 months ago. Thought something was off. Last week, I moved it inside. He handed over a small SD card. Ms. Vega watched the footage silently. On screen, Caleb was pacing in the kitchen, phone to his ear. Yeah, just rough him up a little. Don't leave marks on the face. He's soft. It'll scare him enough. She turned to my parents. Do you still want to call this brothers roughhousing? No one answered. 10 minutes later, Caleb walked in. He looked from me, to Ms. Vega, to Ron, then to the files laid out on the coffee table. What is this? Ron crossed his arms. The end of the show, Caleb. Caleb's smirk wavered. Then he exploded. This is bull. You're all trying to set me up. He knocked over a lamp, slammed his hand into the wall. My mom gasped. And then, just like that, he dropped to the floor, covering his face. It's not my fault, he sobbed. I didn't mean to. You don't understand. I'm not the bad guy. No one moved. Ron said it calmly. We understand just fine. Ms. Vega stood, gathered her things. I'll be making a formal report. CPS will follow up within the week. In the meantime, Caleb is not to be left unsupervised with Julian. Failure to comply will escalate this to law enforcement. My dad didn't even argue. For the first time in my life, they had no choice but to see him here. The golden boy's shine was gone. And the truth? The truth was finally in the living room. I moved in with Uncle Ron the next day. He'd already cleared out the guest room, stocked the fridge with stuff he thought teenage boys liked: cereal, frozen pizzas, energy drinks, and taped a handwritten "Welcome Home" sign on the bedroom door. It was crooked and smudged with fingerprints. I stared at it for a long time before walking in. He didn't try to hug me, just clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "You're safe here. That's the only thing that matters." I believed him. The first week was rough. I kept waiting for Caleb to show up. Every time the doorbell rang, my heart jumped. I even had nightmares, worse than the ones from when I was a kid. But Ron was always there, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee, ready to listen if I wanted to talk, or just to sit in silence if I didn't. School was awkward. Rumors had already started to swirl. Some said I got into a gang fight. Others claimed Caleb had been caught dealing drugs. A few said I broke into my own house and got beat up by my parents. It was a mess, but Coach pulled me aside on my first day back. Said I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Said if anyone gave me trouble, they could come talk to him. My teammates followed his lead. They didn't ask questions. They just handed me a ball at practice and ran drills like nothing had happened. Still got that corner jumper? Darren asked, grinning. Only one way to find out. I muttered and drained it. The laughter that followed felt like the first breath after being underwater. Basketball became my anchor again. For 2 hours a day, I could sweat out the rage, burn off the fear. I wasn't Julian the victim. I was just Julian, the guy who could drive baseline and still make the shot with 2 defenders on him. Meanwhile, the rest of the family was falling apart. Caleb ran away. My mom called Uncle Ron in tears. Said Caleb had emptied out some savings, taken Dad's old pickup, and vanished. Said he'd been ignoring her calls, refusing to answer texts. A week later, someone spotted him at a gas station 2 towns over, with Lacey. That girl never did know when he quit. They were crashing at her aunt's house, according to one of her cousins, living off fast food and whatever money they could hustle up from sketchy side gigs. The courts tried to get Caleb to attend mandated therapy. He refused. Said he didn't need some stranger telling him he's broken. My parents tried negotiating with him, promising he could come home if he agreed to counseling. Even just 1 session. He declined. Said he'd rather rot in a ditch than be humiliated like that. I remember hearing that and thinking, maybe he already was. But me? I was rebuilding. Not fast, not easily, but piece by piece. One late afternoon, after practice, I sat alone on the bleachers, watching the sky turn orange over the field. My breath steamed in the cool air. My muscles ached, and for once, that ache felt good. Not because I was broken, but because I was healing. It was a Tuesday, cloudy. freezing. The kind of day where everything feels dull and gray, even your own thoughts. I was at school, heading to gym, when I saw him, Caleb. He looked wrong. His hair was overgrown, hanging in his face. His jeans sagged, stained, but he zipped halfway, like he'd forgotten how clothes were. He was standing outside the office, arms crossed, eyes darting around like he wasn't sure if he should be there. We locked eyes. He flinched first. "Julian," he muttered, almost like a question. "Can we talk?" Part of me wanted to walk away, pretend I didn't hear him, but something in his face, it wasn't smug, it wasn't angry, it was desperate. So I nodded once. Storage room, into the hall, 10 minutes. I got permission from my teacher, said I wasn't feeling well. Technically true. The storage room smelled like dust and old gym socks. Caleb was already there, sitting on a metal chair by the equipment rack. He stood when I walked in, then changed his mind and sat back down. "Look," he started. "I know I messed up. I didn't say anything. I mean, like, really messed up. Still nothing." He let out a sigh. "Lacey kicked me out last night. Said I was toxic. Said I needed help. That almost made me laugh. She'd finally figured it out. Huh? I've been thinking a lot," he went on, eyes on the floor, "about what I did. To you. To Mom and Dad. I know you probably hate me." I crossed my arms. "I don't hate you, Caleb. That'd be easier." He looked up, surprised. "Then what?" "I pity you." He blinked. That one hit. "You had everything," I said. "People who believed in you. A reputation. Opportunities. And you burn it down just to stay on top." "I didn't mean," he started. "Yes, you did." I snapped. "You meant it every time. Every bruise. Every threat. You thought no one would ever hold you accountable." Silence. He stared at the wall, jaw tight. "I don't know how to fix it." "You don't," I said. "Not all of it. But you can start by being honest. With yourself. With them. With someone trained out." He exhaled, slow and shaky. "I went back home last night. I tensed. They said I could stay if I agreed to therapy. Group stuff. Maybe even inpatient. And I said yes. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't trust it. Not yet." He stood and shoved his hands in his hoodie pocket. "I don't know if I can actually change. But I'm tired, man. I'm so damn tired." There was something raw in his voice. No anger. No pride. Just emptiness. I nodded slowly. "Good. Then let the tired be the thing that breaks the cycle." He didn't answer. Just looked at me like he wanted to say more and couldn't. We left the storage room in silence. Later that night, Ron got a call from my mom. Said Caleb was back home. Said he'd agreed to the conditions. Said maybe this time was different. I didn't believe it yet, but I didn't slam the door shut either. It had been a quiet couple of weeks. Caleb was back at our parents' house, supposedly attending the first few therapy sessions. Uncle Ron didn't talk about it much unless I asked. I didn't ask. Then one Saturday afternoon, Caleb texted me out of nowhere. "Hey, need to grab a few things from the house. Want to come with? Just some old sketchbooks, few clothes." I stared at the message for a while before replying. Only if Ron comes too. He said okay. We drove over after lunch. Ron was behind the wheel, silent most of the ride. I was flicking between the road and me like he was trying to read my mood. I didn't know what I felt, honestly. Tense? Curious? Maybe both. Caleb was already in the driveway when we pulled up, pacing. He gave us a tight nod. No smile. I noticed his eyes looked hollow again, more shadow than person. "Just gonna be quick," he said, leading us inside. He went straight to his old bedroom, rummaging through the closet and pulling out a couple of plastic tubs. I stayed in the hallway. Ron lingered by the door. Then it happened. One of the tubs tipped sideways. A black duffel bag slid off the bed and hit the floor. The zipper popped halfway open, and a prescription bottle tumbled out. It clinked on the hardwood, rolled to a stop by my shoe. Ron bent down slowly, picked it up, read the label. It wasn't Caleb's name. It wasn't even our dad's. It was a bottle of oxycodone, prescribed to some guy named Harold Fitzgerald. I had no idea who that was, but the pharmacy sticker said it was filled 2 days ago. Caleb froze. "That's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" Ron asked, voice sharp. Caleb's hands balled into fists. "It's for my anxiety. I've been having nightmares again. Couldn't sleep. Dad had a few old bottles in the basement and died." Ron held up the label. "This isn't your dad's. This is stolen." Caleb's face twisted. "Why are you coming at me like this? I thought you were on my side." "You don't get sides," I said, stepping forward. "You get truth or lies. Pick one." He looked at me, eyes wide, and "I'm not using it yet. I swear. I'm just trying to stay calm. You have no idea what it feels like to wake up and hate yourself." "No," I said. "I do." That shut him up. Ron set the bottle down on the dresser, slow and deliberate. "You need to come clean. To your therapist. To Mom and Dad. This isn't recovery. This is running in circles." Caleb's voice cracked. "You guys are turning everyone against me, just like always." I shook my head. "No, Caleb, you're doing that all by yourself." He stood there for a second, just long enough for me to hope he might listen. Then he bolted, out the door, down the porch steps, duffel bag over his shoulder. He didn't stop, just kept walking, head low, disappearing down the sidewalk like he was running from a fire under the sea. Ron didn't chase him, neither did I. We just stood in the empty room, the bottle of pills between us, the silence screaming louder than anything Caleb had said. Trust, gone. Whatever progress he claimed to make was cracked now, maybe shattered, and I was done patching holes. It was 4 days before Christmas when everything came apart. I was sitting in the living room at Uncle Ron's place, half watching basketball highlights, half dozing with my hoodie pulled up when the phone rang. Ron picked it up in the kitchen. I could hear the way his voice changed. Stiff, alarmed. He said my name once sharply, then handed me the phone. It was my mom. Julian, she said, breathless, like she'd been crying. It's Caleb. There's been an accident. I stood up so fast the remote clattered to the floor. What happened? She was crying now. He took your father's car. They found it wrapped around a light pole off Highway 61. Your dad was with him. Caleb was driving. They had to cut them out. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Ron grabbed his keys without a word. We were out the door in seconds. The drive to the hospital was a blur of red lights and sirens. I stared out the window, fist clenched so tight my nails left half-moon marks in my palms. My thoughts raced. Was Caleb dead? Was Dad? What the hell was he thinking? When we got there, the ER waiting room was chaos. Nurses moving fast, phones ringing. My mom spotted me and ran over, wrapping me in a hug that felt both too tight and entirely unfamiliar. Your father's in stable condition, she said quickly. Broke his arm, bruised ribs. He's conscious, but Caleb's in surgery. What happened? I asked, heart hammering. She looked away. They were driving. He lost control. They found prescription bottles in the glove box. Empty ones. The officer said they think Caleb was under the influence. Ron stepped in. Where did he get the pills? My mom didn't answer. The police showed up less than an hour later. A young officer with a notepad and a serious expression approached us. I could see it in his face. This wasn't just about a crash. We recovered multiple bottles of controlled substances in the vehicle, he said. None prescribed to either party. Based on the initial tox screen, Mr. Caleb Bennett may have been impaired at the time of the accident. My mom started shaking. What are you saying? There will likely be criminal charges, the officer said. Driving under the influence, reckless endangerment, possibly more, depending on the results. The words didn't feel real, like they were being spoken in some language I didn't understand. I sat down in one of the waiting room chairs, stared at the linoleum, and tried to make sense of it. All the pieces were there, the stolen pills, the therapy Caleb refused, the downward spiral, but it still didn't feel real until now. He could have killed our dad. He could have killed himself. The image hit me, Caleb's face pale, strapped to a gurney, his life hanging by a thread. And still, I wasn't sure if I felt fear or fury. Maybe both, maybe neither. When the surgeon finally came out, he looked tired but calm. He made it through, he said. There's damage, broken ribs, a shattered femur, concussion, but he's alive, barely. We visited him that night. He was asleep, hooked up to machines, a tube down his throat and bruises blooming across his face like some kind of twisted arm. My dad was down the hall, arm in a sling, eyes distant. I stood there, watching Caleb breathe, and I couldn't stop thinking about how many times he'd hurt me and gotten away with it. How many chances he'd burned through like matches. But this time was different. This time, there was no lying his way out, no charming his way past consequences. This time, the truth was wrapped around a crumpled car and flashing in red and blue. And nobody could pretend anymore, not even him. A week after the crash, I walked into Caleb's hospital room alone. The machines beeped softly, measuring the rhythm of a life that had refused to quit. His leg was elevated in a cast, his face swollen and stitched in 2 places. He was awake, but groggy, like he hadn't figured out yet whether he wanted to stay that way. He turned his head when I came in, didn't say anything. I pulled the chair over to his bedside and sat down, setting something on the tray table between us, a sketch pad. His eyes flipped to it, then back to me. You serious? I remember when you used to draw for hours, he said. Before all this, you were good. He looked away. I haven't picked up a pencil in 2 years. Then you're overdue. He didn't move, but he didn't push it away either. I leaned back and studied him. You almost died. I know. And you almost took Dad with you. His jaw tensed. I know that too. Silence hung between us. For once, I didn't feel the need to fill it. I wanted him to sit in it. Let it burn. I kept waiting for you to hit bottom, I said. Turns out bottom hit back. Caleb let out a bitter breath that might have been a laugh. You came here to rub it in? No, I said. I came here to figure out what's left, if there's anything at all. He looked at me for a long time. You hate me. I used to, I admitted. Now I just don't trust you. That's worse. He nodded slowly. Fair. Do you even remember half the stuff you did? To me? To Ron? To yourself? His voice cracked. I remember all of it. Then say it, he said. Not to me. To someone who can help you sort it out. He looked at the ceiling. They're talking about inpatient treatment. A year maybe, court ordered. Residential. You should take it. What if I can't change? I leaned forward. Then at least you won't be able to hurt anyone else while you try. He blinked fast, fighting whatever was rising in his chest. You think there's any part of me left that matters? I didn't answer right away. Then I nodded at the sketch pad. You used to draw our whole family on the porch, he said. Mom in her garden, Dad with the paper, you and me on the steps. That picture, what was it? Some fantasy. Caleb stared at the pad. No, he whispered. It was hope. Then start there. He reached out, slow and shaky, and touched the cover. Just rested his hand on it. I'm sorry, Julian, he said. For everything. I don't know how to undo it. You don't, I said. But maybe you can learn how to stop making it worse. For the first time in years, I saw something in his eyes that looked almost like truth. Like the mask had slipped and underneath was just a broken kid trying to figure out what came next. I'll go, he said. The treatment. I'll do it. I nodded once. Then maybe, you got a shot at something better. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but something. He opened the sketchbook. The pencil in his hand trembled as he made the first mark. And for once, he wasn't drawing a lie. He was drawing a future. One he hadn't earned yet, but wanted to. 3 months later, Caleb entered residential treatment. The court gave him 2 options, treatment or prison time. He took the first, barely. He didn't smile when he went. Didn't wave, just nodded once at me, and Ron before the staff led him through the double doors. I didn't know if he'd finished the program. I still don't. But for the first time in years, I wasn't watching him with fear, just distance. And a sliver of something I didn't think I'd feel again. Cautious hope. Back in Cedar Hill, life started piecing itself together in small, quiet ways. I went back to school full-time, focused on finishing senior year. Coach pulled me aside after practice one day, slapped a hand on my shoulder. "You're leading the team now," he said. "Play like it." I did. We didn't win every game, but we started moving like a unit again. After the last buzzer of the season, the whole team surrounded me, clapping, hollering like we'd just taken state, even though we didn't make playoffs. It didn't matter. We'd earned something else, something better, solid ground. Uncle Ron came to every game he could, always in the front row, coffee in one hand, his worn baseball cap in the other. When I asked why he never wore it, he just said, "Doesn't fit anymore." Like a lot of things in that house. The house he meant, of course, was my parents. They started group therapy a month after Caleb was admitted. I didn't go right away. I needed more time. But Ron went with them to the first session, just to make sure they showed up. My dad, surprisingly, took it seriously. He stopped trying to rewrite history. He listened, really listened. When I talked, he asked questions instead of dismissing things. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. My mom was slower. She cried a lot in the beginning, said things like, "I should have known," or "I thought I was doing what was best." I didn't have it in me to comfort her. Not yet, maybe not ever, but I didn't shut her out either. One Saturday afternoon in April, Ron drove me up to visit Caleb. It was a quiet ride. Neither of us knew what to expect. The facility wasn't what I imagined. It wasn't cold or sterile, just simple, clean, honest, somehow. We found Caleb in the art room. He didn't see us at first. He was hunched over a table, pencil moving fast across a large sheet of paper. I cleared my throat. He looked up. For a moment, I saw panic. Then it softened, just a little. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I echoed. He looked at Ron, gave him a respectful nod. "You drove." "I always drive," Ron said. "Keeps him from running off when things get weird." Caleb cracked a smile. Not wide, not fake, just human. I stepped closer to the table and looked down at the sketch. It was our old front porch, not the real one, the dream one. Dad was there, holding a mug. Mom had her hands in the soil, a little garden box by the steps. Ron leaned against the railing, arms crossed. Caleb was sitting on the top stair, and I was there too, basketball in hand, looking straight out of the frame. It was rough in places, shaky, unfinished, but it felt real. "You did this?" I asked. He nodded. "Tried. Anyway." I stood there a moment, then said the one thing neither of us expected to hear. "It's good." Because it was. Not perfect, not clean, but honest. That night, back at Ron's house, I sat on the porch alone, ball in my lap, hoodie pulled up, watching the sun go down behind the trees. And I thought, maybe that sketch wasn't just fantasy. Maybe it was the blueprint. Maybe this time, we could build something better, not in spite of the past, but because we finally stopped pretending it didn't exist.